Hello and welcome to Inside Edition to discuss national, regional and international issues in depth. During the current health circumstances, it is important to shed light on the recent royal directives issued by His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa to unify national efforts in combating the global spread of the coronavirus COVID-19 with the aim of protecting the citizens and residents of the Kingdom of Bahrain, as well as preserving sustainable development and economic growth. To talk more about those directives and their importance, we are pleased to be joined here in the studio by Shura Council's Economic and Financial Affairs Committee Deputy Chairman, Mr. Rida Abdullah Faraj. Welcome back. Joining me here in the studio is Shura Council member Mr. Rida Faraj. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. Mr. Rida, first off, we know that the impact of COVID-19 hasn't only been on the health of residents and maybe the fear aspect, but more on also on the economic status of the kingdom, being a kingdom that also has a very big GDP inning when it comes to tourism, and that hasn't been possible for all countries that actually depend on it. Kingdom of Bahrain is not dependent on it, but it is a big factor. But recently, His Majesty the King has issued royal directives that unify the national efforts to handle the repercussions of the global outbreak of coronavirus with the aim of ensuring the safety of the people of Bahrain and its residents. At the same time, also maintaining the sustainable development programs. What can you tell us about these royal directives and their importance in the business sector and in the community in general?
I think the first sort of thing one has to do in this regard is just to go back. COVID-19 took everybody by surprise. Yeah. And we being a sort of small nation, definitely the surprise was very big. But one thing one has to sort of really admit that we in Bahrain, or the Kingdom of Bahrain, or the government of Bahrain, from the day one, before even discovering a single sort of case, had the plan in place. Yes. The plan covered the team who would sort of be looking after this COVID-19 pandemic, plus all the necessary equipments, facilities, services all put together.
Right.
And from day one, the sort of really the objective was that we have two things to consider. One is people, the second is our economy.
Right.
And the government, in their wisdom, rightly said people are the most important factor in this, so we have to give the utmost attention to people. And people we mean by all, citizens as well as residents. Right. And this is one thing the government of Bahrain did not differentiate. They did not have, this is a citizen, this is a sort of really, the treatment went for all, absolutely, no exception. And at the same time, we have sort of a lot of sort of difficulties. I mean, we are definitely an economy which really, with limited resources, we had put a lot of plans together over the last, the government have put a lot of plans together over the last few years, which had aimed, and we were very successful in aiming at getting our deficit, budget deficit or fiscal deficit, more or less controlled. Right. However, this came at a time which I think was not the most desired period, but anyhow, we had it, and the government dealt with it, I think, extremely well. They brought in number of packages to really, with a huge substantial sums of money, BD 4.3 billion dinars package, right, which was intended to introduce liquidity, introduce all the sort of support which the sort of business community as a whole would need to have, besides sort of really having everything for the people, both citizens as well as residents. Yeah. And that helped the economy to a certain extent. But however, the impact was too big, and it is too big. Yes. And it is something which we have to sort of really think more about it. And there were a lot of other sort of plans which were introduced by cutting costs, by directing people to consider their spending, by the government, starting with themselves, by the government starting sort of really cutting down their sort of, I think, the overall, the directives, the guidance, all that was aimed at people first, look after them, make sure that they are healthy, but at the same time, make sure that the burden or cushion the economic impact on people as a whole and on the economy in general. But however, there are certain sectors of the economy which have been affected. I mean, definitely the service side of the business has been tremendously affected. And hopefully, with whatever government has put in place and what we are or they are thinking of putting in place in the coming sort of months, I think would get the burden somehow less than what would have been.
Right. To understand the magnitude of this burden and how it has been alleviated, that the coronavirus didn't only affect people that work for businesses, they affected businesses themselves who depend on these people to run sort of. So we've seen a lot of entities that have closed their doors. We have seen entities that have closed for the time being and will reopen maybe after this. And we've seen a lot of repatriation of residents of the kingdom. And all of this is because of this economic burden that has hit the world as a whole. The tourism sector, as you have mentioned, the services sector was greatly hit when we look at hotels and everything. But also within the directives and within the Team Bahrain spirit, hotels have opened their doors to people that were stranded in Bahrain during transit times or at the beginning of the coronavirus, and they have taken them in and they were quarantined for a while. What can you tell us about this cooperation between different entities in Bahrain?
I think sort of really, first of all, going back to sort of really what you mentioned, I think the impact in Bahrain, although has been big, nobody denies that. Yeah. But I think comparing it with the other countries with the similar resources as we have, or even slightly better than ours, has been, we are far, far better. We don't have this, I don't have the statistics, but I can tell you from what we hear, what we read from the other countries. I think sort of really what the government of Bahrain did, how, well, let us say, why they were so successful, because the team was constantly reviewing the situation. Right. So that was sort of really not something which really they formed and they never, they were constantly maybe on hourly basis, they were evaluating the situation. So therefore, whenever they felt that there is something which should be done or somebody should interfere with in it and put it right, they did. So therefore, they found sort of there are people stranded and they are human beings. Yes. We have to respect. I mean, the government of Bahrain has got one thing which sort of really nobody can deny, is that we respect everybody. Right. We treat everybody the same. We don't sort of really distinguish between this and that. So therefore, there's not fair on us as a sort of nation, as a government of Bahrain, to have people stranded and nobody to look after them, especially that their own governments, they could not do anything or they did not want to do anything. So therefore the government stepped in and did sort of really all what could be done to not sort of eliminate, to minimize the burden on those people who have been stranded and they can't go. And I think sort of really, really it's very difficult because we have not really gone how many businesses they have closed down or how many people they have released their staff. I think most of the businesses, other than the small ones which sort of could not, have tried to retain their employees and they have tried to look after their employees. And there have been a very positive thing in this case because of sort of this COVID-19. I mean, not sort of really happy with it. I hate it, but everybody hates it. But I think there had been a very positive things in it. One of it is that the accommodation which used to be provided for the expatriate sort of workforce of most of the companies was not some of it up to the standard. Right. This forced them to really change, give them a much better accommodation, look after them better than what they used to do before. Yes. So therefore, I think I still sort of really don't have figures, or nobody has figures in Bahrain to say, well, this is the number and this is how it's the number. But I think the impact on people, whether locals or expatriates, has been to the really minimum. Say, for example, the government has stepped in and said, we pay the salaries of your Bahrainis. Right. So therefore, don't worry about the sort of Bahrainis. We pay their salaries. Right. Again, the period sort of got over and we could not sort of get rid of this COVID-19. So therefore they came back and said, there are certain industries, they have difficulty. We would step in again and extend our help or paying their salaries for a certain period of time. The electricity, we pay the electricity. We pay the electricity for your first house as a Bahraini. So there had been a lot of sort of really these initiatives which despite the fact that it costed the government huge sums of money,
Yes.
in the period where we have a deficit in our sort of really balanced sort of on our budget,
Yes.
yet the government opted, and I think this is something which we should sort of be extremely proud, opted that people are first, and therefore we shall do everything, despite all the sort of difficulties we have, look after the people, whether they are local or sort of expatriates.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, to also look at where some, when it comes to why some places were closed for a period of time, it was because of health reasons, whether it was restaurants or other places, in order to not have this exposure, everybody being together. Even when it comes to workplaces, the workforce was minimized in order not to have too much exposure between the employees in one place, but they were working from home, and that was something that Bahrain was already prepared for, although they didn't know about the coronavirus. But Bahrain has been prepared for online education, for online work, for
I mean, those are the areas which I
financials.
wanted to come to, sort
Yeah.
of really, despite the fact sort of really there are certain sort of industries or services of the sectors of the industry who suffered. The government did not forget them. They all have been told that please come forward with your whatever sort of really your suffering has been, and there is a plan to help them with the sort of really whatever they could do. And I think sort of really, again, this is one of the positive things, that with this corona, whatever sort of really did to all of us, people became innovative. They started thinking of different things, like home delivery, have become very active with these small restaurants. And this is another sort of really source. And maybe this is opening our eyes that the future is not sort of really that I should be having a place and go there, and I could do it over sort of really the net, and you can come and collect your food and go, or I deliver the food to you. And there are a lot of other services that could be performed. I mean, the education side, the only sort of really problem I think we sort of really were not prepared for is that parents were not well prepared to teach their children.
At home.
And some of them at home, some of them complained. But I think this is also a task where the parents should have trained themselves for. And this again opened their eyes to say, well, look, I mean, not everything schools would do. I mean, I have to do some also. From the social side of view, I mean, the parents being with their kids has helped tremendously. A lot of people I talk to, they say, well, now we understand our kids better. We know what sort of they're asking for. They do respect us better because we have been with them, and we have been sort of really trying to sort of both work out things together. I mean, I see mothers jumping up and down, sort of really the physical PE for physical exercise sort of really thing with their kids, writing reports, talking to their sort of teachers, telling them about what their children have been doing. I think it had definitely, besides this sort of really difficult period have put everybody in, I think there had been some positive things also.
Yes, they were blessings in disguise. Well, Bahrain's economy, as you said, has not been fully hit by the global implications of COVID-19, and various procedures were taken to ensure the growth of the business sector. What can you tell us about the Shura Council's role in this regard specifically?
Well, Shura Council is definitely the legislative side of sort of the kingdom, and they are part of the whole people of Bahrain. They had a positive role, I think, so far. One has been that any legislations which the government wanted to introduce, they understood why they are planning to introduce such a legislation. So it smoothed the operation of getting the legislations out in order to implement whatever they had. They had contributed towards ideas and what would be suitable, what would help to sustain the economy or show the growth, inshallah, in future, and what we should avoid in order not to do, despite the fact that some of the ideas could have imposed additional burden on the government. But the government, because this close understanding between the two sides, especially during this period, had made whatever sort of really government had to plan to introduce smoother, easier, understood better. And beside, the members of the Shura Council and Nawab had a lot of good ideas, which they kept on constantly talking to the government. I mean, we had a sort of really the Minister of Finance and National Economy and his team talking to members of the Shura Council and Nawab about what has happened to our sort of really budget, how we are progressing, how much the deficit is going to be, what extra money we need to sort of really get in order to continue with whatever we had sort of really to do. This is because, I mean, the government, and this is sort of really big credit to this government, that they had from the day one that we have people, their health is important. So neither the Ministry of Health budget was affected at all. As a matter of fact, it was increased. Neither the housing projects were affected, nor any plan other than sort of, they had to close the school because of really trying to avoid sort of a spread of the COVID-19, were affected. So the budget of these three sort of sides, which were so important to the government right from sort of really many years back, continued as it was, and the other sort of really ministries and institutions, they tried to cut down their costs. This was a sort of really a message to all of us as a sort of really part of this kingdom, that we have to start looking at our costs. There are something which is a must, something which you could avoid, something that could be done tomorrow, day after tomorrow. Let us not really rush and spend all what we have. And I think one of the things which I sort of really like to be the result of this is that saving becomes very important. And we should start thinking that this sort of argument which a lot of people put forward, that my salary is too low, I cannot save. I mean, save as little as you can, but save something. Have it a habit of saving. I have 50, I would take 5 away and sort of really spend the other 45. Try to cut what is not necessary and go to things which are really a must and do that sort of things. I think that is sort of really a good lesson also we have learned from this, although this bad sort of thing happened to us. But
exactly. If anything, the pandemic has really shown us how easy life is because we have everything available. I mean, I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, when school was still running on and everybody switched immediately to online schooling, whether in universities or in schools, we found that a lot of people didn't have laptops, which is a necessity everybody usually has when it's something shocking. But then the private sector and the government sector came together and laptops were provided for students. And this is where the help and the cooperation really showed in the worst of times.
I think you're absolutely right in this. And the second thing, sort of really, we don't want to name any country, but sort of major countries who are sort of way ahead of sort of really countries like us. When this epidemic was they were hit with this epidemic, they had a difficulty to finding masks. Here in Bahrain, the government and the private sector both got together, and there are a lot of now factories in Bahrain created because of the need for masks. Therefore, we could sort of really, hopefully, inshallah, with these factories' efforts being put together, we could sort of soon be exporting a lot of masks. The other thing which I find is sort of as a benefit of this, by parents being forced to really have to teach, you have to go to help your kids in knowing whatever they want to do. We started reading a bit more. A lot of people started reading, whether they use the book, which I think very few of them are doing it. They still go to the net and research and how I should teach sort of really this formula to my kid, or this, what is this chemistry, what is this physics. So therefore, I think there had been a lot of good things came out of this.
Absolutely. After we've witnessed this close collaboration between the government and the Financial and Economic Affairs Committee from both the Parliament and the Shura Council, how do you value the progress of Bahrain's business sector and welfare of its employees despite the current challenges that we're facing?
Well, I mean, I would be the last to deny that sort of really this pandemic had effect on our life, style of life, had sort of really on style of our spending, and we had a lot of things. We all have really sort of had really, because of this pandemic, time and the situation which forced upon us to think about what we should do, how we should live, what is important in our life, what is less important in our life. And I think there would be definitely a lot of good things, even from the government side. The government side would start also thinking, and one of the things the government would start really is that pushing people to save more money. Okay, we need to come up with the schemes where we would encourage them to sort of really to save by giving them a bit sort of really candy to at the end of the day, so they would sweeten their mouth.
Interest on their saving account.
And all that sort of thing. But I think there have been a lot of sort of really good things. The best thing I would find is that we have realized that we are all in it all together. We have to act together. We cannot, each one of us, play his violin outside the orchestra. We have to be all part of the orchestra, and we should play. I mean, the best example I could sort of ever give, when the government said we want volunteers, over 30,000 people in Bahrain volunteered. In Bahrain, I mean, sort of a little country, volunteered to do the work, and they have been working. I know some of them. They have been working irrespective of number of hours. As long as he is needed, he is there and he is working. So it has also brought to us this, I mean, we had this sort of really understanding that we have to be together, but I think this has brought us much more together. And the other one, which I sort of really like very much because of this has happened, is that sort of really government comes up with things not because they are they fancy doing it, or they would like to put me in torture or something, you know, because it's for my benefit. So I have to adhere to what they say. Therefore, you find sort of, I walk myself, and I don't see a single person without a mask going out into the sort of market. While you look at sort of the pictures from other countries, people are ignoring the instructions from the government. So we have come sort of really to that sort of understanding that we are all together. This is something for our benefit. We have to all collectively do it to the best of our abilities.
And staying in that part, something that the government has very keenly done in collaboration with the private sector, but mainly the government has done a lot of public awareness, not just when it came to the illness, as you said, wearing the masks and washing one's hands and so on. Here at the Ministry of Information, we have integrated it within our news on a daily basis, whether it's in English or in Arabic, how many patients we have, how many new cases we have, how many deaths there were, and always we repeat, wear your mask, wash your hands regularly, things that are common. But we also have seen these awareness campaigns when it comes to the economic side. So for instance, as you have mentioned, the savings, the banks have given more information on why saving is important. The EDB has made a very nice campaign when it comes to buying only the necessary things, as well as institutions like supermarkets and so on, where they dedicated, as per the regulations of the government that were put, regulated the visits that come to the supermarket. So from 8 o'clock until 9 o'clock, you only have it for pregnant women or the elderly. And then after that, you have it for people that come, and only a certain number can come in. So all of these are actual awareness campaigns that are there to help people understand how grave the situation is, or how grave it is, and what to do next. So do you feel like there was enough awareness, or is there always space for more?
First of all, let's say we sort of really in Bahrain, and this is something really a big credit to the team as a whole. From day one, they had definition for everything. And they opted to be very transparent. We are going to say the situation we are in, irrespective of what people may think or feel or fear or whatever it is. So therefore, the time for announcing how many tests were made, how many cases they were found, how many cases were hospitalized, how many cases are critical, and and unfortunately, how many deaths we have had during the period, and what is the total number. While a lot of other countries, they had confusion of what goes here, what goes there, should we report this, should we not report that? Some were hiding this figure somewhere. We never had that sort of thing. So therefore, that sort of really communication, that transparency, that style of reporting, plus all the other sort of the Ministry of Information sort of really having their programs, sort of really changed, not changed only, but they had introduced a lot of areas which previously we were taking it for granted.
Yes.
Now we find that it's a must, despite the fact that you may take it for granted, but you need to constantly keep on repeating people, wash your hand, be careful with wherever you go, don't sort of go to places where you are not needed to be there, don't mix with the people, keep a distance between them and yourself, and all these issues. I mean, I think our awareness programs have been very good, but I would have liked to be a bit more. I would have liked sort of really to get these clubs, societies involved, and they themselves take a role, active role of also really creating the awareness within their own communities, because they are much more effective than sort of really sort of having a program in the television or in the radio or in other sort of leaflet or pamphlet or whatever it is distributed.
Understood.
This, I think their role was not really that obvious. I mean, or at least I didn't see it that obvious. I mean, everything else was perfect. I think the best part of it is the transparency, the accuracy, the timely information, which sort of really, I think, very, very few countries had it in the manner we had it, despite our resources is not as big as the others are. And new factories have been sort of, I know that sort of somebody the other day was sort of really brought me a box of their new product, which is excellent. I think they are sort of really looking for international certification for their mask, which is a great thing. And we never sort of thought about sort of really going to that level of sort of.
But it's happening.
These sort of things have opened sort of the eyes much more. I think sort of there are a lot other sort of really things which I sort of really we have learned from this COVID-19, and the fact that we had a team, dedicated professionals who had their sort of strategies well established right from the day zero, from the day sort of one when we started sort of really doing this, is that really we have the economy should move forward, but we have people also who should live to move that economy forward. So the economy, I think, sort of really with whatever plans the government has and they are thinking of, the minute we sort of get this COVID-19 sort of pandemic sort of relaxed or whatever it is, and we start opening up, I think would move forward. Unfortunately, it may be slower at the start, but definitely it would move forward because people are determined, and this is committed, determined that they shall work together to move their economy together. So therefore, I think sort of really there had been a tremendous positive things, which very, very, I'm extremely happy that we sort of really got to this state of all thinking the same thing, all working together. And definitely unhappy because it delayed the plans, because the government had real plans of sort of really fiscal sort of deficit balancing, specific strategies, what to do, what not to do. Unfortunately, we had to shelve some of those for making sure that we are going forward.
But they will still be coming in the future, and I have some figures and numbers for you. In a recent published survey conducted by the Bahrain Center for Strategic International and Energy Studies, Dirasat, it was revealed that 95% of the 10,546 participants asserted the efficiency of the royal directives in countering the coronavirus and in spreading assurance and a unifying national spirit among society. Also, 87% of the survey sample described the performance of Team Bahrain as excellence. And then this is very positive for me and makes me very happy to see that 95% of the people that took this survey considered themselves part of the team of Team Bahrain. What can you tell us about this social appreciation and this national spirit?
I think this is well recognized, well felt, well understood. And this, if indicates anything, indicates two things to me. One, that we have citizens of Bahrain who really love their country, who are really properly educated, I would say, in that regard. and that here is a government who is translating their understanding, their needs, their requirements into plans which would work for them. And this is how they sort of respond to anything. I mean, if something, government have come up with something which is completely out of this world and I don't like it at all, definitely I would either shy away from that question or I would never answer such an answer.
Correct.
So the fact that we have this positive, high percentage of the population confirming this indicates two things, as I said, really the dedication and understanding of the people and the responsive government who really tries to translate what people want in terms of needs, strategies, procedures, whatever sort of really is needed to counter-attack whatever situation we are in.
Yes,
and I think I'm very positive that sort of really soon after we get this sort of situation sort of controlled and we understand exactly what sort of really need to be done. Now we are more or less better than what we started, because we never knew what it is. And we didn't know even what is this virus, how effective is this virus, would it live under the sort of really temperature of so and so, or would it sort of go and sort
of... It was
a
trial and fail thing.
Everything was sort of trial and fail. Now we know something. I think very soon we would start really moving forward in the plan and trying to achieve our 2030 vision, which is really the plan which is still valid. And we have not sort of really, or the government have not, or neither the Shura or Nawab have ever doubted that the 2030 we would not achieve. We may have to delay a bit or put something ahead of the other, but I think the plan is that we should continue. We are not sort of really going to do something other than that.
Especially that reprioritizing does not mean changing one's plans, just seeing what the circumstances now, what fits with the circumstances.
And there are things which we have to change, really. We have to think now, the retail business of me having a shop, sitting in the shop with my goods, and you come along and sort of buy, would be something of the past in very, very near future. So therefore, I'm sitting in my home, you have a web or sort of really whatever it is, and then I shop there. And it's far better for you because it comes to you directly. Then you can do a lot of other things maybe. So therefore, there are things which we have to change because of this, but not that we would sort of really be in any way delaying our vision 2030.
I mean, when it also comes to the pandemic's efforts or this national spirit that we see here, there are a lot of institutions, like for instance the Royal Humanitarian Foundation, who threw out initiatives such as Fina Khair, which was started by His Highness Sheikh Nasser, and we've seen that also the Bahraini and the resident spirits, the people that live in Bahrain, have contributed to it, and it has gotten numbers that were so massive, but it helped a lot, didn't it?
I think this is another indication of how people responded to the sort of things which they felt really has come from them, or it is part which they would like to see. So from the moment sort of His Highness announced this sort of a scheme of Fina Khair, people, locals, expatriates, whoever, with whatever they could. And there is nothing, I mean, the good thing is there is nothing that you have to contribute 50,000 or 500,000, 1 million or whatever it is. Contribute anything. And they all contributed, and some contributed very low sums of money, but
they contributed.
They contributed. The thought, the feel that I am part of this society, I have to help, is what counts. And this is really something which I think shows a lot of Bahrainis and even citizens living among Bahrainis, because the Bahrainis are having that sort of really culture, and they have sort of really somehow passed it away. And I think sort of really this shows that sort of really people could be counted on. People would be part of your programs in the futures, and this is an excellent sort of indication.
Well, this recognition of Bahrain's work towards containing the pandemic, as well as helping economically, as well as providing all necessary or basic necessary needs for human beings were recognized internationally. How do you value the international recognition of Bahrain's efforts in dealing with the pandemic in general?
I think sort of really, first of all, as a Bahraini, I'm extremely proud that sort of my small country has got such a sort of image internationally, which many major countries have not achieved it. I think sort of really that really credit goes to the planning right from the beginning. Before even there was a case sort of reported or found or whatever we call it, Bahrain had everything planned for it. They had the facilities, they had the equipments, they had all the sort of really, so that not a single day we heard that sort of really masks are missing.
Yes.
There were people who started beginning, they were playing, so they're hiding it because they wanted to sell it more, but sort of the government were very strict, and they stepped in and they stopped that one. And then from that day, there's nobody. I mean, so as a matter of fact, the other day I saw an announcement that a box of 50 masks is for 1 dinar.
Yes.
So that's sort of that much sort of is availability. Now, the second thing is that they sort of created this central point, the focal point, that everything comes to this point. And from this point, sort of really they announce it to the others and whatever it is. And this team of people, they were all the time really devoting all their efforts, energies, time, whatever they had to this really fighting this pandemic. So therefore we had the information coming out timely, information coming out I think correctly more than any other country, because we did not leave out any case if we felt that this is part of the COVID-19, not like others say, no, this may be something else. No, we don't report this death. No, no, everything was reported and reported timely. And then they were available to listen to what has happened. And if there is anything needs to be improved or whatever it is, we improve them. For example, we started with the mobile sort of really stations or centers, moving people sort of are old, people are not used to going to the sort of hospitals. We go to them. So therefore they were going to their places. Then they said, well, okay, people would be in sort of public places like maybe sort of clubs, maybe shopping centers. We move there and we do that sort of thing. So I think the only thing I would love really to see is that somebody documents this procedure we followed from beginning to whatever date we sort of really, inshallah, we close this chapter, to become really something for people to study. And how we did it with sort of really limited resources. We definitely have limited resources. I never say we have about sort of as much as we want. We have limited resources. With the limited resources, we did manage something which major countries have failed to manage. One day you wear a mask, next day don't wear a mask. We started from the day one with instructions. We never deviated, we never changed. So this shows that how people were sort of really dedicated, how people were on top of the situation rather than really making Mr. X say something, Mr. Y comes up with something contradicting it.
Well, in adding to this, and this will be my final question to you today, is when these awareness campaigns came out and when this recognition came out, one tool that was used and that was used very effectively was social networking and social media. How do you value the effectiveness and the approach, especially during the current health circumstances, in using these facilities and these tools that were given to us?
I think it was sort of really very effective because people got the news all practically at the same time. And the good thing about it, that they never did hide anything, good or bad. They kept on saying it, that this has happened. We found a sort of pharmacy so-and-so has sort of really kept 20 boxes of this in the back store or whatever it is, and we have ordered. So therefore, I think it was very effective. It helped the government and helped everybody, all the institutions who really had a hand in this, to really lend hand, and all of them collectively to work towards having the population in Bahrain, whether locals or expatriates, all aware of what is happening in both the languages, Arabic and English, and being very transparent and correct, yani not something which is really half correct or sort of really you falsify the facts. No, the facts were reported as they were known to them at that point of time.
Yeah.
And I don't say that you know the facts at the first instance correctly. Sometimes you may sort of really get reported a wrong fact and then you react. But we were all sort of really prepared to say the truth and to communicate as early as possible, and communicate to everybody at the same time, without any exception.
Yes. Mr. Rida Al-Faraj, now you are the Deputy Chairman of the Shura Council's Economic and Financial Affairs Committee. From you, I would like a couple of words when it comes to your section, talking about finances and economic to the public.
The first thing I would say, watch your finances. I won't say calculate, but I say take into account your income and your expenditure. Don't spend because you have 50 dinars today. Have a 50 dinars, spend what is a must today, save some money for your future, whatever plans you may have. The other thing sort of really is the sort of really the waste. Try to minimize it. I think sort of really we find a lot of income of individuals, I'm talking about here, go for things which you could avoid and you would not be using it. It's not just nice to have it. I don't want nice to have it. I want must to have it. And if it is a must to have it, have it. I mean, nobody sort of really stopped that sort of thing. Try to sort of really prolong the life of some of whatever sort of things at your disposal. I mean, my car, I don't have to sort of change it every 2 years or 3 years or every 4 years. Try to prolong it. Look after what you have. Make sure that sort of really what you have is well maintained to take you for whatever period it is. And then don't overuse anything you have, because there is no need for overusing things. I mean, if we are three going to sort of the market and we would be meeting all together, try to go three of you in one car rather than sort of each a separate car of whatever sort of really. So I think we sort of really should be thinking that the country has done, or the government or whatever we call, has done everything they could do possibly with the resources being limited, and to get us through this pandemic, which is very, very sort of important. Now it becomes our role to make sure that sort of really from now onward we make sure sort of really we try also to minimize what could be saved. Don't waste too much, either food, clothing, your equipment, everything of those sort of things, and try to do some of the things yourself. There's no need for every time I need sort of really to change the bulb in the house to go and call somebody from outside to come and do it for me. Try to do something in the house. And I think these are all little things. And in the olden days, people were doing it. Maybe we didn't have that much sophistication as we have now, but they were doing a lot of those.
Still possible.
It's still possible.
Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Rida Faraj, for being with us today and for answering our questions. And we are confident that the royal directives and government support will always maintain both citizens and residents' best interests in cooperation with the Shura Council's committed efforts, and they would definitely contribute significantly to alleviating the financial burdens of the commercial, industrial and tourism sectors, and would ensure a competitive recovery of these institutions and its activities. We thank you, our dear viewers, and see you next week in another episode of Inside Edition.